So Whimsicott only really has two things going for it. It has its speed, which is 116, which is pretty good, and it has its ability Prankster, which also is actually pretty good. But it has 60 health, 85 defense, and 75 defense. So because its health is so low, it might survive a hit, and if it does, it will survive with not a lot of health, especially considering its typing, which is not the greatest defensively. 67 attack, you don't really want to use Whimsicott as an attacker. And 77 special attack, which is decent, but it's not the greatest. They're better. And its abilities, again, Prankster is a really good ability, especially for something supportive as Whimsicott is. Infiltrator, which is decent, but for the most part, Infiltrator is better on attackers, other than you ignore sub. Ignoring sub is really good for having a lot of status moves, for being more of a supportive like Whimsicott, but you're not going to do damage, so none of these really matter. And Chlorophyll is okay, but you don't really, okay, with Chlorophyll you're just really fast, but you can't really do anything. That's why Prankster's pretty much better. Like, unless you're using a move to try to finish something off, Prankster is pretty much better than Chlorophyll 9 times out of 10. But its typing is Grass Fairy, and like I said, it's not a great typing defensively. You're weak to Flying, Steel, Fire, and Ice, and a 4 times the Poison, which 9 times out of 10 your opponent's gonna have one of these. Is either gonna have Poison, Fire, or Steel to run up against you, or Flying. So like, you really don't, like, you have a lot of resistances. Like, you're immune to Dragon and you resist Fighting, Ground, Water, Grass, Electric, and Dark, but you just have a lot of weaknesses too. You have a lot of resistances and weaknesses, but your weaknesses are common weaknesses, so that's kind of not great for Whimsicott. But again, for being more of a supportive thing, it doesn't really matter as much that Whimsicott has so many weaknesses. Oh, it does, it hurts Whimsicott, but it's not the tankiest thing anyway. But what you want to do, one of the best items for Whimsicott is just a mental herb, so you ignore taunt. So that's really good, especially with Prankster. So the plan is you have your own taunt too, like a Prankster taunt, especially like to lead the battle off, is a really good Whimsicott, because let's say they're coming up and they want to set up too, you taunt. 9 times out of 10, you're really fast with Prankster, so if it's a Grimmsnarl or pretty much anything like that, you outspeed. Even if they have Prankster too, you will outspeed most times and get yours off. And if you have a taunt, you can pretty much Prankster taunt them. You have to be careful of Magic Bounce though. It's like an Espeon or something like that, because if they switch into a Magic Bounce, you're in trouble. But Tailwind, what you want to do is come in, if you're not worried about taunt, for example, or if you already taunt them, then it's the next turn. Tailwind's really good. What you want to do is Tailwind and then either Moonblast or Memento really next turn. Really, you want to Tailwind, take a hit, and then Memento. And pretty much it makes that opponent useless to whatever you switch in. You get a free setup, you get a free Swords Dance, Nasty Plot, or you can start just setting up, because they have minus attack and special attack. So you can just go from there, and whether it's Cosmic Powers or whatever, you can just set up or just come in and start a sweep with something like Moxie. But Memento's really good, and you're not tanky enough to where, like, you can't really be stopped with this unless it's something that Prankster taunts twice. And if that's the case, then you can kind of predict the taunt. Like, if you Tailwind and then they taunt you, you could either, if they use Prankster for example, like, you still outspeed even with the Memento. So you could Tailwind, they could taunt you, and then you could Memento and KO yourself before they have a chance to taunt you again. And go from there, which is really good, with the good ability of being fast. That's why I like the timid nature, just so you can outspeed. Also, I like Moonblast here, just in case you get taunted or something like that. You just want to do damage. Or if it's something where, like, you Tailwind and they do, like, Stealth Rocks, or they do something like that, or they set up and then you Moonblast, like, or if they, like, use Agility or something and then you Moonblast, or if you know they're sashed, or they're just really frail, or they're 4 times weak to Fairy, or something like that. Moonblast is just good to have as a damaging move, especially if they're sashed. But another way to run Whimsicott is a really stally set, where pretty much you want to substitute, pretty much what you want to do with this one is you want to come in after an ally's been KO'd, or you come in on an opponent that you know is going to set up. And for example, you could substitute and then they use Dragon Dance or Nasty Plot, whatever, and then you encore them and you get them stuck into that setup move to where either they have to switch out or they have to just sit there for multiple turns not being able to do anything. They're just raising their stats, and then the turn when encore wears off, just use encore again. And you're behind a sub anyway for safety, so it's not, so even after they set up all the Nasty Plots or whatever status they move, when they're done setting it up, they still have to hit your sub, which is really good. And by that point, you'll have full health again from the leftovers, and you can kind of play around it like that. I would say probably Modest Nature though, just because these two are priority +1 anyway. That's the good thing about Encore with Prankster, is that you'll get the +1, so if you switch in after they set up, they either have to switch or they're getting stuck into a setup move and they can't hurt you. And you could always switch out too. You could always encore and then switch out to something else that can really threaten them if you can't. But I like the Energy Ball and Mega Blast, or Moon Blast. Giga Drain's also an option. Maybe not on this set because you have the leftovers and you're going to gain health back anyway. You could also trick them, you could also encore them into using a move that you resist that just doesn't do any damage or something like that. Or like a dragon move, for example, would be really good. If you switch it on a dragon move and then encore, and then they're forced to use a dragon move, or at that point pretty much switch out. And you can kind of play around like that, or just encore them. Like encore is really good with Prankster. But one thing that I really like doing with Whimsicott, or pretty much anything with Prankster in either switcheroo or trick, is just the lagging tail. Prankster, switcheroo, as soon as you come in, because you'll get a +1, you're in a whole, lagging tail won't really affect you because you're in a different priority bracket. So you Prankster the switcheroo, or you Prankster switcheroo, and you give them the lagging tail. So even if they're using trick room, even if they're under a trick room or anything like that, if you all are in the same priority, so if everyone's using a normal move, they'll always go last regardless of trick room, regardless of their speed or whatever. So it's really good to shut down something like a Zamazenta, Zacian, anything that's really fast. So especially the things like Reggie, this one, shut down, because he's so, at that point, he's just low defenses. Same with Ninjask, same with Pheromosa, at that point, Calyrex, Zacian. If they're not, maybe not Zacian, because they're really tanky, but if they're not, especially these ones, like the speedier ones, like it takes away one of their biggest things, like Selgor, for example. And if they're not sashed, Zorora, if they're like Life Orbed, even Dragapult, for example, you just shut them down and they can't do anything because now they're the slowest thing on the field. And at that point, I like just running 3 moves at that point and then switching out, honestly. You could also get rid of Psychic for something like a, I don't know, an Encore, just whatever you want in that last slot. Knockoff is terrible on this set too, by the way. Don't use Knockoff. Maybe a Tailwind, a Taunt, something like that if you just want to run another move in that case. It's also really good though. It's just really good to shut down something, even if it's like slower, just to pretty much make it go dead last. You can do some things in doubles too to pretty much shut people down. But again, you can run 3 offensive moves, or you can run another status move like Encore. You can run Endeavor too, something like that, because you know they're going to go after you. Stun Spore if you really want to double up on them not being able to move. Or if you would just expect a switch, but that's 75. I don't like the 75 accuracy. That kind of sucks. But something, this is a Whimsicott in doubles with the Tailwind, Charm. I like Tailwind and Charm and Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam is a dual hitting move. Charm really can protect your ally. If you're worried about your ally getting blown up from a move. Also, Whimsicott actually resists. Okay, it resists Earthquake, but if you're worried about your ally getting blown up with a move, Charm is really good to lower their attack. Like a physical move, Tailwind to boost your speed. You could either run Encore or you could do something with a switcheroo lagging tail here too, especially because you're mainly Prankster anyway, so you'll have a +1. But I like Encore in case something tries to set up or something tries to use a trick room or something like that. Because of Prankster, you'll pretty much have a +1 priority in the trick room. You do have to be careful though of all these Prankster sets. Be careful of dark types because now they're immune to Prankster. But again, I like the mental herb in case like you go for a Tailwind or a Charm and they try to taunt you. So you can play around that. But again, Dazzling Gleam. Some of the other moves, you can run Cotton Guard, Cotton Spore. Cotton Spore lowers their speed, that could be really good just depending on how that works. Cotton Guard can just boost you up, make you really tanky. It doesn't learn ally switch or anything like that. Grassy Glide, for example, if you're in a terrain, well, not Grassy Glide. Also, another one that's actually really good is Nature Power. If you want to run another attacking move, because based off Nature Power, depending on the terrain you're on, if it's just a normal thing, it's Tri Attack. But if you're in any type of terrain, it's one of these 3 moves. So especially electric or psychic terrain, you get a free stab move, a really high base power move. So you can kind of play around with that, especially in doubles because of the terrain switches a little bit more. It also has access to Solar Beam and Hurricane. So if there's sunlight, you have a free solar. Okay, it's not. You have a free Solar Beam. You also have Hurricane in case there's rain or something like that. But it's kind of, if you're running on your team, then it's good. Same with Growth too. Growth raises your attack and special attack by 2 in the sun. In harsh sunlight, raises them by 2. Normally raises it by 1. So if you're running a sun team, you're not worried about being supportive. You can just raise your own stats instead of like Encore. Just raise your own stats and then become more of a threat with the Dazzling Gleam. But again, some of the other moves Whimsicott learned: Shadow Ball, Endeavor, if they're like lagging tail, for example. Endeavor, you could do some things like that. It has poison powder and stun spore. They just have low accuracy, so I don't like them. Leech seed's also a good option, and you could also just cotton guard leech seed and just become unkillable physically, even with your weaknesses. But you don't have any sustain, which is kind of a problem. But you become unkillable. Helping hand and doubles too is really good since you're so supportive. Or if you know you're about to get KO'd this turn, just helping hand and then get KO'd. That way you still do something. But Swift. It also Psychic's pretty good. Grass Knot. Like, it doesn't have the greatest of coverage, especially because it can only really do special things. But like, the good thing about Nature's Power too is it's technically a status move. So Nature's Power always has a free. It's always a free +1 priority attacking move, which is really good. It also has Worry Seed if you want to get rid of someone's ability. Tickle lures are attack and defense. But yeah, Nature Power having pretty much a free +1 damaging move is pretty good. Especially if we're gonna have up to 95 base. It'll either have 80 or 90 to 95 base power, which is a pretty good priority move. Substitute. It has the terrains and Trick Room if you want to set that up. Whimsicott is a low-key really good Trick Room setter. Trick Room Pokemon, because since it has Prankster, Trick Room's weird because it has negative priority, so it'll technically have -7 priority, or -6 priority instead of -7, so it'll still 9 times out of 10 go dead last in a turn. But once you're under Trick Room, Whimsicott's really good because it can do things, even though it's fast, it can still do things because of Prankster. It can have its +1 priority and still be the fastest thing in Trick Room, as long as you're not doing damage. Safeguard's also really good in doubles, Light Screen. Again, a lot of supportive moves, but Attract too has its uses because you can play around with that. But also Fake Tears if you want to. It lowers their special defense by 2, so you can do some things where you Fake Tears an opponent and then the ally shreds them. Or you could Fake Tears something and have their ally use a dual hitting move like Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave, and KO them when otherwise you wouldn't have got that KO. But that's how you do that's how to use Whimsicott in Pokemon Sword and Shield.